I'll just read from the text messages that I sent this morning. Revolutionary Road feels like it was designed in a lab for me to hate it. It's about the suburbs, which I have spent most of my life trying to escape in one way or another. It's about a loveless marriage. It's about being trapped in a job that you hate. And the sexual politics of this movie could be its own 2-hour conversation. Like the fact that a woman never gets any real sexual pleasure in this movie is something that you could really have a long conversation about.
Yeah.
Well, she
Especially
just
how,
picks piss poor partners.
yeah, well, that's also true. And I really can't say if this is a good movie or not because I hated it so much. Like I can't do the thing that I can normally do where I can kind of split my brain into I like this, I don't like this, and this is good, this is bad. I can't put it on that scale because I'm pegged all the way at the bottom of I hate this.
Okay,
Like,
okay. I have a question. Are you reacting to it kind of viscerally? Like there are the elements in there that are part of your life that you hate, can't
oh, of
stand?
course, I'm partially reacting to it viscerally. Like, and that's what I'm talking about.
Is
Like,
that weird? So where this is how me and Chris did with The Hunt. It's like we had a
right.
visceral reaction to the thing that kind of clouded our judgment of what this film was about.
Right. I can't think about how well made this is in the way that I would normally think about it in terms of a lot of other movies because I was just so repulsed by the entire thing. Like I this is the exact kind of movie I never want to watch. Like it's ever like, and I could have told you that that's on like I could have read that on the box and been like, nope, never want to see this fucking movie. Because I knew like at 5 minutes into the movie, I knew what this movie was. Like as soon as he's being shitty to her backstage at the play, it's just like, great, it's gonna be this movie, huh? And it was for the next hour and 40 something minutes. It was a movie about two people who don't particularly like each other who got trapped together. They should have just fucking gone to Paris.
But that's the twist. That's the thing. It isn't just the dissolution of an American marriage. I think part of this film, and this is what I just blew me away when I first saw it. It's these guys at the beginning is a cliche. They're suburban, unhappy, fighting, all that stuff like that. And then someone just pops up an idea. Let's go to Paris, and it is such a good idea that it actually reverses this trend for quite a while.
Right.
Now,
and it would have been good if they did it.
I know it. Well, that's
and
the
movie
thing.
punishes
The
movie punishes Kate Winslet.
Yes.
The movie punishes Kate Winslet for having that idea for the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
like, I'm sure this is based on the novel, but like,
but the thing is, okay, you have to admit there's a very interesting irony that that they come up with this idea. And it's so fantastic. He's like, we're doing this. This is a great thing. He goes to work. He's relaxed. He's in a
the part where Dylan Baker
dictaphone out and comes out with a Don Draper
He's like, what's his
he's
name
at lunch.
in,
He's at lunch
Office
with
Space.
Right.
Yeah.
He's
He
at
gets
lunch with
better at
Dylan
his
Baker.
job.
He does. That's the thing. That's a weird thing about it. The seeds of the destruction of the family are built into the idea about improving the family. It's essentially tragic.
The scene where he's at lunch with Dylan Baker and the other guys, and Dylan Baker's like, "Why the fuck are you going to Paris?" And he's like, "Because it's great. Like, why wouldn't I go to Paris?" Like,
they had to explain to everybody in this film.
And I'm so on their side at that point. It's like, yes, go to Paris.
Aren't we all?
This.
Aren't we all on their side?
Yeah,
I lived in these shitty commuter suburbs outside of New York. It sucks. Like, it's a shit place to live. It destroys your soul.
For Burt Lancaster to come through in a swimsuit,
or
for
somebody to show up and offer you a new life.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Or perhaps a box where if you push the button, someone dies, but you get $1 million.
Right.
Like,
the Gamja bar.
In some ways,
suburban America.
Don't forget, this was a 1961 novel.
Yeah,
and it's. I'm not saying it's just kind of coming out of the 50s into the 60s, and this is definitely a critique. I guess I'm stacking this up against a lot of Douglas Sirk films I've seen, and what this is a Douglas Sirk film without any of that wonderful.
Without any of the pleasure.
No kitschy melodrama.
There's no joy in this movie.
It is totally blissless.
It's bleak.
The guy
and
from
all
yes.
of his movies are fucking joyless. Like,
he's English.
I don't. So
Yeah.
what? There's plenty of English people who make movies that have joy in them.
Well, I forgot who wrote it, but the
one
guy
about the council flat and the teenagers. Like even that movie has
Time
some
Bandit?
joy.
Fish Tank.
Fish
Tank.
Tank.
Yeah.
Or
Even
Fish
that
Tank,
movie
yeah.
has some fucking joy in it.
Mhm.
I just having to watch these people slog their way through these awful existences is just
I
it's
guess you're no
numb.
big fan of Updike, huh?
No,
Oh,
it's
thank you for bringing that up. Actually,
it's
Yeah.
numbing. It's numbing and dull. And if I want to see the world be shitty, I can open my eyes and look outside.
Well, here's the thing, though. It's like it is bleak and joyless, but the characters, for a moment, have this window of opportunity where they're not having joy, but they're looking out the window and seeing the
seeing joy.
opportunities.
They're seeing joy at
And
a distance.
that's plot point one. Let's go to Paris. And to me,
Yeah.
that was where I went, ugh, because I thought this is going to go one of two ways.
They're not going to get to Paris.
They're not going to get to Paris,
I
or
never thought they were going to get to
will
Paris.
get to Paris and
And
find
it's
out
even worse.
it's not anything else. It's them.
It's not an American in Paris.
God,
Yeah, at that point, it's.
I think I'm going to be
Before
the one
Sunset.
defending this movie. Weirdly,
Yes.
No,
Yeah, I
I'm
thought of
defending
Before
it.
Sunset, actually.
Yeah.
This was, I thought, like I said, it's been a stripped down. Talk about Cirque again. They call his films an un-merry-go-round because everybody he gets on there ends up being maximal unhappy, even though it has a fake happy ending. This was not have a happy ending. This
No,
has
that
an extraordinarily unhappy ending. And in fact, the coup de grace of this film at the end is the Wheelers being erased from the community.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, God, that's
Kathy
devastating.
Bates basically kicking them on the way out.
Literally turning down the fader until
And down
you
to
can't
fader, and like say, we're
hear
not
them
going to talk about the
anymore.
Wheelers again. And
It
it's like,
almost that almost brought the movie back for me. Like
It was
there
one of the best parts.
yeah.
That
That
almost
and the
like
man,
that was
that and the
insane.
man behind Scott right now.
Oh,
it got it
oh, yeah. John?
that pushed the rock about halfway up the hill, but then unfortunately it stopped, so it just rolled right back down again. Like
Well, it is the tale of Sisyphus.
mhm.
It felt like
I picked my metaphor for a reason. Thank you.
Yeah.
But again, secret. This is also one thing about melodramas is that, especially family melodramas, there's a secret owner. Here he is. He knows.
Like how his
He
lips
knows
have
everything.
disappeared.
This
I
guy
don't even think
knows.
that's not a secret. There's nothing secret about
No.
these movies.
No,
Well,
he's
the thing is that this film it lacks
We've
melodramatic.
seen it
There's no
all.
melodramatic subtlety. It's actually right in front where everything is. The thing is, but yeah, he just basically just tells people the truth, and the people,
He's the court jester.
people who are in the establishment think he's nuts, and people outside like, well, you make totally perfect good sense to
Yeah,
me.
but you know what? In 11 or 12 years, he's
Mhm.
going to make all the sense
Yes.
because
well, he's going to be a hippie.
60s, the fucking Woodstock was a reaction to all the, and so I'm gonna have to, now I got to fucking defend this movie. So I texted Scott. I texted Scott as soon as I started watching. I'm like, oh God, I totally memory hold this thing. I know I had seen it. I saw it, but on a screener when it came out. And I remember disliking it a lot, but I couldn't remember why. And within 5 minutes, I'm like, oh fuck, that's right. But the thing about, and maybe it's because, you know,
Chris, may I interrupt you for a second?
yeah, please.
Did you intensely dislike it because you didn't think it was a good film, or because it made you sad?
Couldn't remember why I disliked it.
Oh.
What's the answer, though?
Well, no, part of it is, you know, we all bring our little bit of, you know, our little personal perspective. You know, like the one thing I remember about this movie is Michael Shannon, that line I keep putting in the chat, which is you want to play house, you got to have a job. You want to play really nice house, you got to have a job you hate.
Right.
I'm sorry, is that autobiographical, Chris?
Oh, completely.
Okay.
No, I mean, and I'm probably the only one here who had a corporate job for 35 years.
Yeah, that's the thing.
There's that scene where
I mean, I had one for 15 years and it destroyed
no, but I
my
mean,
soul.
like, but in like an office, right? Like,
no, but I still worked for a giant corporation. It destroyed my fucking soul.
there's that scene where he's sitting down and the guy's like trying to figure out how to get him to stay, and he starts throwing money at him.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happens.
That's what happens.
You think you're halfway out the door,
Jack.
and you've got this great idea about what you're going to go and do, and then somebody throws money at you, and everything in that moment, you take the good idea and you put it over here because now it's about that.
So I watched that happen after I stepped down to part-time, I was
Yeah.
still doing that 1 day a week. It happened to the manager of the store I was working at. He had his way out. He had his quit. They gave him $10,000 and the week after Christmas off. And he was like, I mean, I can't say no to that.
This
No,
is what I used
who
to do at
could?
my job. I would find
Yeah.
out somebody good was thinking about leaving, and the first thing I do is I get on the phone with HR. I go, we got to get some fish hooks into them.
Yeah, that's
And
how it
what
works.
we did.
Uh-huh.
Because that's all,
Yeah.
as a person trying to keep a thing afloat, you don't want the good people to leave, so you got to get some fish hooks into them, and that's what they do to Leo here. And so there's a great deal of, you know, like that definitely that cut me where I live a lot. But watching it this time, what I realize is this is an indictment of a lifestyle. And it's so funny. Like, I think, like, I'm sure, you know, MAGA, you know, make America great again. Let's go back to this where everybody's fucking miserable.
Yeah.
Because we're all
Where
in our
everyone's
little-
drunk and cheating on each other.
We're all drunk, we're all
Yeah.
cheating on each other. We're
Well,
all
that's
lined
the
up
only
for
way
train
they
every
can make it
morning.
through the day.
Like, I know
before they
Mad
get
Men,
drunk.
I know Mad Men covered a lot of this, but I saw like 2 episodes of that show. Like, this for me is that whole thing in like 2 hours.
It
But
is actually, it
this
is
is a whole
distilled
bunch
Mad
of
Men.
people
It
utterly
is. It's
miserable,
Mad Men
except
without
for
the joy.
there's the neighbors who next door who are perfectly comfortable fitting into the
Yeah.
slot that society deems that you are supposed to be in order to be a happy suburbanite. And Leo and Kate couldn't do it. And
Mhm.
I think that at the end of the day, like, the 60s was a reaction to this.
Yeah.
Well, this.
That's
Well,
what
no, no,
happened.
no.
Great
The very,
suit.
the very late, the
great
very
flannel
late
suit.
60s,
Yeah.
the very
Right.
late
Yeah.
60s were a
The funny
reaction
thing
to
is,
this. The first part of the 60s up until like 66 is just this.
Just
Yeah.
this.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
the neighbors,
It's like
you bring
this
that up because
dying.
the neighbors, I think, are in their own way even more unhappy than Frank and I forgot her
Well,
name.
yeah,
Sure,
of
'cause they've
course, and that's why they
accepted-
hold on
No,
to
they're
it.
They're
deep into it, and he's fallen in love with the neighbor, and like she's totally devastated, and she hides it. So it's like I said, the merry-go-round is that's 2 families. Then, you know, and so then the realtor shows up with the crazy son, and that's 3 families.
Yeah.
And it's like it's basically everyone's just showing their dysfunction the entire film.
Kathy
I can't
Bates,
wait
as
for her
usual,
to
the best
pull
thing
out the
here.
sledgehammer.
This guy here who has to live the
Kathy
rest of his
Bates.
life, knowing about his piece of what happened. My understanding is that he was an even bigger piece of shit in the book, and they kind of, I mean, he's a pretty
Soften
big
him up
piece-
a little bit.
well, he's a pretty big
Humanized him.
shit in this movie, but I mean, I guess he's like only slightly more sympathetic in the movie, but he's still pretty awful. I mean, I don't know. This is a movie I admire way more than I
His
enjoy
character is
watching. It is fucking
irredeemable.
painful to watch.
Uh-huh.
It
Oh, mind
really
you,
it ends in the most depressing way imaginable. Like, where's my?
I think basically everyone besides Kate Winslet in this movie is irredeemable. Like,
well,
Kind of. Well, you know,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
she's
Maybe-
irredeemable in her own way.
because I thought the performances were just
Everybody-
top-notch.
And he says,
Top
what's
to
his
bottom.
name? Shannon, Michael Shannon's character says that to her right before he just baits
Yeah.
Leo's character so hard. And it's hilarious, by the way.
Yeah.
Best scene in the movie. And
Yeah.
then before he leaves, he said, you know, I feel sorry for you. Or maybe not.
Yeah.
And he just turns that gaze from him to her.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I called it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's
this
good
is
stuff.
like, I think this is a good movie. I think it's got a thing to say. I don't want to watch it ever again. I've only seen it twice, and I disliked
I'm never gonna watch this
experience
again.
both times. Only
Never
this
gonna
time
watch it
I
again.
feel like I know why I disliked it, and it makes me like the movie better.
Mhm.
If
Well,
that makes any sense.
no, for
Oh,
me,
yes.
my like autism moment for this movie, the fucking ceiling in Grand Central's too goddamn clean.
there was
In the 1960s, that ceiling was pitch goddamn black because of all of
Cigarette smoke.
the smoke
Uh-huh.
from all of the trains going in and out of that station for the last 40 fucking years.
And
They
cigarettes.
cleaned that when I was a teenager.
I remember that. I was there
And
when
it
they were
changed
I was
color?
in New York when
Yeah,
they were
no,
Yeah.
they left. There's a spot that they didn't clean. There's
Oh,
a
that's great.
square
They
that they
show
didn't
ya.
clean,
Uh-huh.
so you can see because it's the constellations, it's the night sky and the constellations. And when I was a little kid, you couldn't see any of that. It was
Mhm.
pitch fucking black. And then they cleaned it and they left this one square where you can't see anything other than blackness. And every time you see the ceiling in this, I'm like, no, it's too fucking clean.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Although
Tad,
mind
were
you,
you living there? Were you there in the mid-90s?
I moved out of the city in the early 90s, but I went back a lot.
Yeah, right after they cleaned the shit out of that thing, we plastered the inside of it with Gap heads.
No,
Yeah.
boy, no doubt. Although
Yeah,
they
you
did,
did. You fucking did.
they cheated the inside of the Grand Central really well. You couldn't tell it was what year it was. It was that, aside from the
No,
cleanliness.
the gray flannel suit,
But it still looks like that.
Yeah, I know.
the gray flannel suit, like
I mean,
again,
this the big and all the office space stuff. The art direction's beyond reproach. They took that, they found that house and restored it all the way back to the
this
50s.
thing.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
that thing.
speaking of too clean, I think that describes both the art direction and the storytelling
Mhm.
for this film, and that's my critique.
Yeah.
I think of because now I've seen 25 minutes of Road to Perdition. I've seen this, and I've seen, of course, American Beauty.
Mhm.
What about Jarhead?
Well,
or
that's
Skyfall?
the problem, John, with a lot of period pieces. That this is one thing I thought that Mad Men really did well, was that I read an interview with the set director or something, or the art designer, and they were talking about the fact that when they went and found clothes and furniture and all kinds of other stuff to put in these rooms,
Mhm.
they didn't get everything from like 1961.
Yes.
They got stuff from the 50s and the 40s.
Yeah,
because
mixed it all
like
up. Yeah.
30s.
Hold on.
There is stuff in Road to Perdition that's like 4 degrees off of the house from Seven. Like
Yeah.
there is some gross shit
Yeah.
as you get later on in that
Yeah.
movie.
No, I was talking
but
about this one.
but this movie, yes, I 100%.
And I think the vision isn't just the visuals. I think the
Yeah.
storytelling is the characters are. I mean, there's something about this and American Beauty where it's like you get involved up to a point, but the characters are kind of flat. It's kind of predictably
Yeah,
played out.
you missed my thing about how he's a lesser Wes Anderson with dioramas, but
Yeah.
this is another one of those.
You feel it a little bit. It's
Yeah,
just,
well, yeah,
and
you
here's
said-
the scene where this happens,
Well,
you know?
Sam Mendes is
the
a
thing that
cool
upset me the
observation.
most was that the transitions were so quick and
Mhm.
abrupt
Mhm.
that if they had been a little bit slower, it's just all of a sudden it's like they're screaming at each other, and it's like, especially after the meet cute at the beginning.
That's Leo's best scene, by the way,
Yeah.
Scott.
Yeah.
That's
Which one?
the scene where he's
Oh, yeah.
doing the dictation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Although I did like the
He
scene.
stops to light a cigarette in the middle of
Yeah.
it. Like it's yeah.
I like the scene in the bar with Kate and the neighbor. They're flirting. That was just exposed so much, and the lighting was one of the things. This film, I stumbled upon it 3 weeks ago on cable and just started watching it, and I could not stop watching it because it was like, first of all, I had to stop and look up who was the DP. It was Deakins, right?
Yeah.
And God damn, this film is beautiful.
Yeah, it is visually
beginning and end
very
is
pretty.
gorgeous, and it weirdly enough kind of emphasizes the emptiness of the whole thing, because it's like natural light and there's no bright colors anywhere. It's like even the stuff in the roadhouse is kind of, there's red and there's green and there's blue and there's beige, and it has a kind of a trapped feel to it, but
There's a whole IMDb,
not easy to do, man.
There's a whole IMDb thing where somebody talks about like sort of the meaning of all the lighting, and this is envy and this is rage and that kind of stuff, and I think that's kind of probably accurate.
Yeah. Well, he's telling a story through visuals, and sometimes you have to kind of follow along with it. But I said,
look at how blue this is.
Oh yeah.
What remind me what year this was made?
Like
09 or 08.
2008 or 9.
Yeah, 08.
12
08,
years
that's
after Titanic or something like that.
Yeah.
I just
It was their big team up
it's like
again.
adapting a story in 2009 that was written in 61. Is that what?
61,
Yeah.
And sort of not bringing anything new to it, but just doing a faithful rendition of it. It's like, oh, the gray flannel suits. This is a movie about conformity and how it crushes your soul. It's like,
yeah,
okay.
I'd like to.
Do you have something to tell me that I don't already know?
It would have been stunning. It would have been stunning in 61.
Two kids from Titanic.
This is also 6 years after Catch Me If You Can, which is a movie that's set in this same time period and completely subverts all of it with like a character who's sort of steps outside of all of that.
Oh yeah.
Abigail was a real piece of shit in real life, but like the way that movie captures like, oh, I don't belong in this world. Like I think like and of course it's the same actor who plays Agua.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's a much more interesting story, which I think is why Spielberg did that and not this.
Yeah, I
Right,
can see that.
right. I'll
Now,
tell you,
also,
if you guys want to see something, I recommended this last year, I think, when I watched it. I'm sure I talked about it. But if you want to see something that sort of addresses some of these same issues, um, but I think it's just frankly better written and a more interesting story. There was a miniseries called Fleischman is in Trouble. It's set in the modern day, but it's very much about people who've known each other since they're young and what happened to them when they grew up and got married, and sort of like all the expectations and all the potential and where they ended up and how they take that out on each other or don't, or how they don't take it out on each other. There's a monologue. It's nearly a monologue, I think, by Lizzie Kaplan towards the end of the series. It's just unbelievable. And
Who else is in that besides her?
it's Claire Danes and who's the fellow that was who was the lead in the Facebook movie?
Jesse
Oh,
Eisenberg?
yeah.
Eisenberg.
Jesse Eisenberg. Jesse Eisenberg is Fleischman.
All right. So
Yeah.
anywho, one of the things about this film is that I don't have any fear of melodrama because, again, I guess.
Oh, I love a good melodrama.
Oh, you're a Douglas Sirk guy.
I'm a Douglas
Yeah.
Sirk guy, so this is like, I thought in some ways this is not as fun as a lot of Douglas Sirk dramas because the message, like this message, which is Bullhorn, is a tiny little squeak in his movies, and so it lacks that subtlety.
This movie's not gay enough.
Although, what's
If you
the
like,
name of the one? What's the name of the one, Scott, with
Oh, man,
Rock Hudson?
Oh, I love that.
There's a couple.
Where
Can
he's
you
like the
imagine if
gardener.
Leo?
Yes,
can you
that's
imagine,
great.
All that
Can you
heaven
imagine if
allows is my
Leo
All that
had an
heaven-
affair with
All
the
that heaven
neighbor?
allows.
All
Yeah.
that heaven
Yeah.
allows.
So seriously, I just like John. I think you hit the nail on the head. Can you imagine if Leo's character falls for David Harbour in this movie? Like they have
That's
the
in the
affair.
70s.
Right.
They have the affair.
I would've woke the
That
film
would
up.
be
That's-
so interesting.
It would
Like
be fun to watch Leo and Shep have a zipless fight.
that movie
It's
exists.
like, which one would finish first?
Or actually, I still bet my money on Kate Winslet and Catherine Hahn.
Yes.
Yeah, right. That movie exists, Tad. It's called Far From Heaven.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
an imitation Cirque film done by what's his name, Todd
Imitation
Haynes.
Cirque.
Yeah,
Todd Haynes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Which is terrific.
It would
Somebody
be a
should pick
double
that.
bill of happiness.
I like that. I wish they had a bigger budget. That's the only problem with that film. All right, well, I don't know.
I have two things to say.
Oh, please take it, Jim.
I did love the fact that at one point I noticed that Kate Winslet's character's name is April, and it's what is it about January? What's her name? And,
Jones?
January Jones.
January Jones.
Uh-huh.
Yes, they're naming girls after months.
January
Because
Jones
they couldn't
is
be
great.
bothered.
Tuesday Weld.
Yeah, Tuesday. Well,
I'm gonna pick a Frederick
January
March movie.
Jones. January Jones is great in the Three Burials of Michaelides Estrada.
Mhm.
and the other thing that totally took me out of the movie for at least 5 or 10 minutes is when still planning to go to Paris and was learning French. That's let us speak French. I've got a book that I picked up there in a used bookstore. It's like red and blue and it's spiral bound.
Right.
Oh, the same book?
The same book.
Oh, you have the same
I
book.
have that.
Oh, all right,
Yeah.
great.
Oh, how funny.
I do like that they were going to take a canard ship across too.
Also, it's weird.
Yes.
Do you think?
I like the fact that they were going to, yes, take a ship and not fly.
Well, they all.
But I
Would
guess
you want to
with
get those
kids-
kids on a fucking plane?
Yeah,
in the-
no,
No,
I
no.
would have strangled them.
The question is: this was the
in their-
days of Pax Americana. This is the late
Yeah.
mid '50s. So America kind of ruled the whole Western world.
Yeah.
Do you think that Americans going to Paris could have actually done what everything is they're going to do, or you think it would have been fish out?
No, that's why I agree with John that like of the two choices, of the two ways it could have gone, they both would have been terrible.
It
No,
would
I
have been
think
a
that
disaster either
I
way.
think they. I think that she absolutely could have gotten a job doing like secretarial
Yes,
stuff.
but then she would be the unhappy one.
for some
Right.
international agency, even
Right.
Yeah.
Just like
NATO or ECA.
just like that stupid Coca-Cola movie we watched.
Oh, the one with Cagney?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 1, 2,
Oh,
3.
One, two,
three.
one, two, three.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now, weirdly enough, it's like, okay, they actually, one of the things that talks about the inversion is that she was going to go and support him while he found out what he wanted to
Which
do.
is
Which
incredibly
really pisses
generous.
That
people
was
off.
crazy. The
It's
thing is,
incredibly generous considering he doesn't even know what he wants to
I
do.
thought it was-
He's
I
not
thought
like
it was
he's
the
a
most
painter
wonderful-
or a writer.
I
Or
think
the
she
most
just wanted to
wonderful
get
part
out
of
of
the
the
entire-
fucking house.
Yeah.
the best part
has
is
it.
Right. She doesn't want to live in this shit anymore.
Yeah.
She wants,
Yeah.
to live in, she wants to live in like a garret apartment with the big
Connecticut.
windows in Paris. And the thing is, the idea about having her support him while he found his thing was like it's heresy to Americans back then.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Well, you see
that
it
reminds
when
me.
those guys
Uh-huh.
react.
That reminds me of the reaction of the neighbors, and that was I had sort of been bagging on this movie, but I mean I did like Michael Shannon. There are things I liked about it, and I also liked Catherine Hahn because I thought of like all the things in the movie that I said were sort of predictable.
Oh,
Where did I cut off?
All of it.
cares?
We
At
didn't
the
hear any of it.
beginning.
you're making a big point that
I just wanted to say I
Catherine-
loved the neighbors because their reaction when they had them over for dinner was, wow, that's really weird, but they sort of suppressed it and they toasted to Paris and then sent them home. And then it was like, oh my God, can you believe it? No, I can't believe it. I'm glad you think it's a terrible
Yes.
idea too. But
Uh-huh.
then Catherine Hahn starts weeping.
Yes.
And that's because she's jealous.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
She's
I know.
crushed because they're doing a thing that would sounds like an absolute dream to her.
And this is the
Great melodrama.
origin story of Agatha from the
From what's it called? WandaVision.
yeah.
Pretty much.
This is where she becomes a witch.
Yeah. Well, it makes more sense as being a sequel to Titanic. I give you that because they would made a lot of assumptions.
On account of Leo died.
No, he didn't. He was just holding his breath.
Well,
There was room on that fucking
They
door.
proved it.
Mythbusters proved it.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Jesus Christ.
All right. Okay. Let's just go to thumbs
Again,
up.
I admire it more than I like it. So like 60%.
I am a huge melodrama fan. I love
Still
this
don't know
film.
if it's good.
I just thought it was just really remarkable. It's a great work.
I liked it so much because
Into that
Tad
movie.
hated it.
There he is. All right.
That gives
I'm
it
not
an
Jared.
extra.
Jared's not even here.